Welcome back to the Left of Old North. I'm your host, Adrian, and your other host,
CJ.
And today we are coming off the heels of January 6th and also, well, a much more peaceful January 6th, right? 99% peaceful.
Yeah, but you know, the bar for that is in hell, really. It's so low.
Yeah, you're right. Anyway, we are coming off the heels of that, and also there was a Together We Rise rally on January the 5th, and then the very next day, it was announced that the North Carolina Supreme Court was going to get a kickback to decide on the Jefferson Griffin versus Allison Riggs race. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about a couple other happenings with the weather. Let's talk the weather today, CJ.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, talk about the weather, and we'll also talk about future skies in what could possibly be a 2026 run for the Senate. But you'll have to stick around for that at the end of the episode because we've got a lot to cover in terms of what the fuck is going on in the North Carolina Supreme Court race. CJ, would you like to enlighten some people as to what the
what's going on? No, that's a good question. No, so like Adrian just said, essentially the case to decide what to do in the case of Jefferson Griffin and Allison Riggs has been kicked back to the North Carolina State Supreme Court. There's also two other court cases going on related to this, but at this point I need like a flow chart and maps and all this stuff to keep track of what's what.
Yeah,
but it's absolutely insane. Just a very, very short Reader's Digest summary. Essentially, November came along, and this past November came along, and we voted for state Supreme Court. We had Allison Riggs, Democrat, and Jefferson Griffin, Republican. Now, Allison Riggs has been on the state Supreme Court for a while. Jefferson Griffin wanted to take her seat. And so naturally they have the election, and he's ahead initially, then recounts and provisional ballots and all that stuff occur. And Riggs is ahead by about 700 votes. Mm-hmm. And then Griffin comes along and says, well, I don't like that. How about I try to challenge 60,000 votes? 60,000. 0,000. Yeah. That's absolutely insane and unheard of.
Like, this isn't even a situation like in 2020 when Trump called up Georgia and was like, I need 11,780 something votes. Like, I think he had the exact number plus one. Yeah. This isn't that. It's not Jefferson Griffin calling up his buddies in the court and saying, I need 735 votes. This is him and the NCGOP using their legal apparatus to try and just completely disenfranchise 60,000 voters across North Carolina, especially. And it is weird how much the pendulum swings towards disenfranchising black voters.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that they did that on purpose, but it is a little odd that somewhere around half of them happen to be black voters.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. So what they are trying, the kinds of voters that they're trying to get thrown out are covered under UOCAVA, which is the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act. And this is something that helps people who are in the uniformed services. This also sometimes helps, it's more often service members, but it also helps out people who are like stationed overseas as contractors or are spouses of uniformed service members, things like that. I actually have some personal experience with this because I was an FVAP representative at several of my bases. I helped people get registered to vote. And let me tell you, not that easy to be an illegitimate UOCAVA voter. You have to do this at least 45 days before federal elections. This is not like a last minute thing. You have to make sure that you're getting it signed by a representative over there. They have to check it. And then you have to mail it. So we already know that mail-in voting can have delays and can have complications and all these other things. But like throwing these voters out is not only a slap in the face to people who are overseas that are still North Carolinians, but it's also a slap in the face to people who are serving in the military.
Yeah.
And like, I just don't understand why. I mean, I do understand. It's because it's an easy group to target. They're not going to be here to come and fight for it. But then you also have the people who are covered under HAVA, which is Help America Vote Act. This was an act that was passed by the United States Congress in 2002 during Bush's administration. And this helped to allow states to meet new standards and replace voting systems, improve election administration. This was supposed to make the act of registering and voting easier. And so folks 20 years ago who registered under HAVA are now being challenged as illegitimate voters. This is not a coincidence.
No.
They're just trying to gunk up the system. And here's another little tidbit that I think is interesting. So WUNC, Rusty Jacobs, on January 9th, which today is 3 days ago, released a story basically saying that the attorney that made the order to the judge to block the certification of the Supreme Court election went around to the opposing counsel, never talked to them, just straight up went to the judge, said, this is our issue with this election, and now we're here. So the way that they tell this story, right? The ex parte motion took place on Tuesday before Judge Cynthia Sturgis in a Wake County courtroom. Sturgis, a registered Republican, at first granted the motion, which was then filed by Craig Schauer, who represents Jefferson Griffin. This is the attorney in question. Griffin, a North Carolina Court of Appeals judge, keep that in mind, is the GOP candidate seeking to unseat Democrat Allison Riggs from her Associate Justice post. And after initially granting the ex parte motion, Judge Sturgis later withdrew it because the court became concerned that neither the respondent nor the respondent's attorneys received appropriate notice of the motion, which is required by local rules and Rule 65 of the Rules of Civil Procedure. And if you don't understand legalese, that means they didn't talk to the other team before filing this suit, which is illegal. So we shouldn't be talking about this anymore. This should be over, as far as I'm concerned. But I'm not in the legal system here in North Carolina, so it really doesn't matter what I think.
Wait, Republicans doing shady shit? No, say it ain't so.
I know, who could have seen this coming? Who could have seen and this is actually huge. It's almost like they have to use this unfair and possibly illegal mean to literally block the will of the people in an election that was decided by, yes, a very slim margin. Nobody's arguing that. But hey, man, you can score 100 points in a basketball game, but if the other team scored 101, you lost.
Yeah, exactly. And I was watching, the NCDP had a little live stream tonight that was essentially the state of the race. So just kind of catching everyone up to speed on how we got to this point, where we go, possible outcomes, that kind of thing. And of course, Justice Riggs was on there talking for a little bit. And she mentioned that her parents, who have lived in North Carolina for decades, and her father, who served his country for, I think she said, about 30 years, both their votes are being challenged. Her parents are being challenged. And this is absolutely insane. And I don't think we can emphasize enough how absurd and just out of the ordinary this sort of thing is. Whenever you have an election, election day votes are cast, you go through the ballot cure process, you go through the provisional ballots, absentee ballots, all that stuff, you count those out, right? And then you have the opportunity to ask for a recount. You have an opportunity to ask for a couple of recounts, really.
Yeah.
And then that's the end of it, Yeah. And it sucks if you lose, but it should be. It sucks if you lose, but you know what? That's how it goes, or at least that's how it is supposed to go in a healthy democracy, in a campaign where both parties, both candidates, I should say, respect the rule of law and respect the foundations of our democracy. But I think it goes to show, and it says a lot about who Jefferson Griffin is as a person, as an American, and possibly as a judge.
Definitely as a judge.
Yeah. That, it says a lot about him that this is what he's trying to do.
Yeah. Far be it for a judge to be litigious. I'm not saying that that's, but the fact that they are going to such extremes, just it's not enough for them to lose by the count twice.
Yeah.
It's drawing it out. It's blocking the certification. It's calling up his friends in the legislature to get certain things put on the docket to take the legs out from underneath the NCDP to be able to challenge this. Because unless y'all aren't paying attention, the General Assembly is in session right now. And so are the Supreme Court justices.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if they're hearing cases right now, but they've started their jobs. They're official now.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we only had the one Supreme Court justice race this year. But I want you all to imagine that something like this happens again, where maybe it's a couple thousand votes even. It's not 734, but it's a couple thousand votes. Imagine 4 years down the line when we have 3 Supreme Court seats up for grabs. 3 of them. Imagine 2 years from now when we have one up for grabs with current Associate Justice Anita Earls, who's going to be running for re-election. And that's why it's so crazy that we have these independent races that are partisan, that you say oh, well, I shouldn't, it's really just the candidate, it's not necessarily the party. No, it absolutely is the parties. Absolutely it is. And until a couple days ago, we saw that the Democrats almost had no teeth on this, that we were just kind of hoping and praying and making sure that let's talk about it on social, but ultimately she's going to win and the truth will out. right? It's now January 12th. We are over 2 months from the original election. There's no certification. There's no indication that he's going to give up anytime soon. So what I'm glad to see is that, A, the National Democratic Party is bringing attention to this and is footing legal fees, as far as I know. I don't know if that's official, but I saw something about that they're making it well known, like, hey, this is a big deal. And Democrats across the nation need to be paying attention to this, which is a rare bit of spotlighting from the Democratic Party that I think is a good thing. They need to be waking up and like supporting some of these much further down ballot races. But that being said, you know, what's also good to see is that the North Carolina Democratic Party is showing that they do have teeth. Mm-hmm. Keep it up, is what I say. Keep up the pressure, because they're not going to stop.
No, they're not. They are very much Republicans, that is. The party...
just as a whole.
Yeah. They're very much a give an inch, take a mile sort of group. They, again, I think it's obvious from their actions with this, their actions on just a national level, and basically everything they do, really, that they don't care about your vote and allowing you to vote and express your voice. They care about keeping themselves in power, about enriching themselves, empowering their rich friends, helping their rich friends get even richer.
Yeah.
They don't care about what you have to say, as long as that what you have to say goes against what they want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and far be it for us who are on a podcast called The Left of Old North to make sweeping generalizations about all Republicans. But this is the party you support.
Yeah.
You know, this is the kind of thing that you want. You want total domination of a state where half of the residents vote a certain way and half the residents vote a different way. Like, this is a pretty purple state. We've said it on pretty much every episode so far. And actually, Chris Cooper released a book just this last year called Anatomy of a Purple State.
Great book so far.
Which we have started reading, and is going to be on our official Left of Old North book reading list. I'm sure it'll have a sticker on it in bookstores anytime, any day now. We look at things like this, and we have to have a 10,000-foot view of little microcosms of races like this, because this is the same kind of tactic that is continuously used throughout North Carolina politics. Mm-hmm. That you have one party trying to stake claims, little ones, every chance that they get. And if you give an inch, like you said, they'll take a mile.
Yep.
And in North Carolina, those are some pretty long miles.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of space here to play around with. Mm-hmm. North Carolina is not the biggest state, but it is one of the states that has a large population that is condensed in certain areas and leaves you a lot of wiggle room to play around with gerrymandering, to play around with demographics, right? North Carolina is a very diverse state too.
It is. I will say, I think it'd be safe to say North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Florida are...
Oklahoma is not what I was expecting you to say.
I see that look, yeah. Now, these are the three states where I think the national GOP loves to experiment and use as testing grounds to see what they can get away with and what might fly on a national level. In Oklahoma, like, the big thing right now is education out there. You know, trying to force Bibles into classrooms, all this stuff. These are the testing grounds.
I see. So Oklahoma is more like the Yucca Flats testing ground.
Yes.
And then like North Carolina is more of the chessboard. Let's see where we can move the pieces around to try and make things happen. I see where you're going with that. And because one of the first states that came to mind for me was Missouri. Because up until very recently, Missouri was a swing state. Yeah,
it was.
And I lived there for a time. I lived there for 4 years. And during my time, what I realized was that this is Trump country. This is like, yeah, a lot of people vote Republican here. A lot of people vote Democrats. But a lot of these Democrats were yellow dogs.
Yeah.
But when Trump came around, that was a different story. And I think you have a lot of North Carolinians that feel the same way. Now, how does that translate into future wins for the Democratic Party? You can't run against Trump the same way we did in 2024. Right. You just can't.
No.
There's a lot of lessons to be learned from 2024. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from 2016, and they're not the same race.
No.
A lot of people, and we might go off on a bit of a tangent here, but I think a lot of people are making the assumption that just because Hillary Clinton was a woman, she's not dead yet. Hillary Clinton is a woman who's running a national campaign. Kamala Harris is a woman, a black woman. Well, black Indian woman that is running a national campaign in a state that is historically does not have the greatest track record with race relations. Did that move the needle? Probably. Maybe. A little bit, but enough to like sway it so far that she lost by as much as she did? No. I think that there's something deeper than that. I think that there, is a population of, and we talked a little bit about this in our last episode, there's a population that's dying off.
Yeah.
In a few places in the counties where we ran, there was a large swath of Democrats that just are gone, just off the rolls, either because they moved away or they died.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this is also coming off the heels of COVID-19. So the latter is probably more true.
Yeah.
And these are Democrats from rural areas that probably are a little bit more socially conservative, but they will vote for a Democrat because of, their daddy and their daddy's daddy and their daddy's daddy's daddy voted Democrat, not Republican. Never a Republican. And the problem is that now we have a situation where some of these older folks who are more socially conservative, who were on the fence to begin with, may have swayed towards Trump, especially if they go unaffiliated. And then some of the people who were socially conservative Democrats are either dying off or losing interest, and now you have a huge swath of younger voters that are coming in that are disaffected, that don't care. What do you do? And back to the problem that we addressed in our last episode, where we need to start attracting people who are younger.
Yeah.
Because it got better marginally in this last election, that there was a slight uptick in the involvement of younger voters from like ages 18 to 35. Not fantastic though. Not as good as it could have been, especially for the amount of chirping that we heard on TikTok.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't say I blame them really. I mean, a lot of, and it's probably going to go into even more of a tangent.
That's what we're here for.
I think a lot of younger voters, I'm going to include myself in that while I still can, because I'm not 35 yet.
Right. Don't worry, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Don't remind me. But I think a lot of the younger voters, let's say like youngest of the Gen Z voters, they grew up, with school shootings and all that stuff, the drills, whereas like you and I, we had like tornado drills. They have active shooter drills. Yeah. They have a government and they have a party that, to their perception, has not done a damn thing about it. They see the party as toothless. They see it as spineless to an extent, and they see it as organization that is just devoted to maintain the status quo. Take a look at Nancy Pelosi and the AOC thing a couple weeks ago.
Sure.
Of course, why should they, waste their time and their day and whatnot and go out to vote for a party that they don't think gives a shit about them? I can't blame them for feeling that way.
I'll do you one better. They think that being a Democrat is cringe. Yeah. And that's the worst offense.
Yeah.
Yeah. All their favorite streamers are decidedly not Democrats. They think that SJWs and all these people who ascribe themselves to be for the greater good are just cringe and not based. Yeah. But I agree with you. I think that there is a systemic issue within the Democratic Party. I'm not super hopeful, but I'm hoping that I'm pretty sure Ben Wickler's going to be the next chair.
Yeah, same.
He doesn't have my full-throated endorsement because, I mean, what is he going to do differently? Not sure. He's promised a lot of things, as they all do. Yeah. So we'll just have to see. But I like what he's done so far with, what was it? He's Minnesota, right?
I thought he was Wisconsin.
He's one of the cheese states, as I call them.
Wisconsin, yeah. Okay.
As far as I know, he's done a great job up there.
Yeah, he has.
How is that going to translate to the national stage is the real question. Because it's one thing Wisconsin is Rust Belt, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's some value to be gained from having somebody that runs pretty successful campaigns and candidates in a Rust Belt state, in a working class state, in a Midwestern state. It's good to not have somebody from the East Coast. I mean, I know Jamie Harrison's done what he can, but he was also somebody who kind of got off on a bad start because he ran against Lindsey Graham and wasn't the greatest turnout for him. I mean, it's South Carolina, but there you go. Yeah. And I just think that his tenure has kind of been undercut by a lot of the problems that people are ascribing to National Democrats as a whole. This inability to message, right? That in and of itself has become like a flagship message against Democrats. Democrats are bad at messaging. Okay, well, half the time when you ask people what do you mean by that, they can't really give you a good answer. I've heard decent arguments for this. I'm not saying it's not true, but a lot of the time people will just be like, "Oh, the Democrats are so bad at messaging." It's like, okay, well, what do you think they could do better? Just more. Just talking more about this. And it's like, yeah, they've talked about that. Well, just talking more about this. It's like, yeah, no, they've talked about that. It's like, what do you want them to do exactly? Yeah. I think we need to get back to a position where, I say we as in like people who are on the left, not just Democrats, not just leftists, just everybody who is trying to win against these Republicans, especially in this state.
Yeah.
We need to get to a point where we have somebody at the helm who is going to lead us into a direction that is not going to be part of the status quo.
Right.
Because I think people are sick of it. And as much as the Nancy Pelosi's and the Chuck Schumers are not sick of it, because it's been very lucrative for them so far.
Insider trading. What? Huh?
Like I said, very lucrative, both politically and financially. That shit needs to change. Because we're at a crossroads now. Trump is one of the most unpopular presidents to win re-election ever. Against the president who has a, 32% approval rating.
Yeah.
And the man, people want to give Biden a lot of credit, and I think he deserves a lot of credit. But giving your predecessor, giving your vice president, giving the person who's going to run after you 100 days to run a national presidential campaign is insane.
Yeah.
It's like, just slice me off at the knees, why don't you? At the torso. People want to blame Kamala Harris for a lot of things that happened in this campaign, and I think that they did the best with what they could.
Oh, yeah.
But there was let's be very clear about this as well. There was basically no other option. People wanted a full-on primary, and I was one of those people until I realized that if there was a full-on primary, anybody who wasn't Kamala Harris would not get access to any of the funds that were raised with the Biden-Harris campaign.
Yeah.
Big problem. Ultimately, though, didn't really matter, did it? Because the price tag was pretty high, and she still didn't win.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, a lot of different facets to this. This is not one definitive problem with the 2024 campaign. This is a problem across the board in a lot of ways, because a lot of really popular candidates lost this year.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sherrod Brown in Ohio was one that shocked me, absolutely shocked me, especially against somebody like Bernie Moreno, a literal used car salesman.
Jesus.
A literal con man. So, like, this isn't like, oh, Trump's a con man kind of thing. I mean, like, this guy has been to court because he was caught on fraud. Like, it boggles the mind, right? 2 years later, we could have had Dr. Oz in Philadelphia or in Pennsylvania. Like, just think about that, you know? It's like,
I try not to.
But that was another one, Bob Casey.
Oh, yeah.
Losing in Pennsylvania. This is the kind of thing that in 2026 cannot happen.
No. 2024 was just an awful year for Dems. It really was. Now, on North Carolina state level, it was actually pretty good, I will say.
Yeah.
On a national level, it was...
We stopped the bleeding somewhat.
Yeah. But on a national level, it was absolutely awful. And that's why whoever is going to be DNC chair, I want them to come in with a rabid viciousness. Like, I want an attack dog. I want someone who is willing to tear into every Republican they see. I want someone who is willing to just, let a nuke drop on the Republican Party, essentially, and just leave them decimated. Like, I want someone who's not afraid of pick fights, I want someone who, you know what, they might make mistakes, they might screw up somehow, but I want them to do that running headfirst full speed into that wall.
Sure. And we can't be afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the thing as well. Republicans make mistakes all the time. Does that slow them down? Hell no. Hell no. If anything, it gives them more ammunition. Yeah. Because then it's like, oh, look, see, they're coming after us. They're coming after us just because we make one little mistake. We can't be afraid to continuously put the other side on the back foot.
Yeah.
And that's what we haven't been doing.
Agreed.
Like, we as the left have to stop hinging. And I know what some people will say, because I've already gotten this from a couple people online, is, well, the Democratic Party's not really on the left. Yeah, I know. Ostensibly, though, nominally, let's stick to you want to make a wider umbrella? You want to move toward the center? Let's just label everybody from this side over to the left.
Yeah.
That makes it more cohesive in my mind.
Yeah.
Regardless, the Democratic Party as a whole, like you said, has to be ready to be an attack dog. And unfortunately, right now we're at a nexus where a bunch of different people think that we should be doing one thing or another.
Yeah.
And that we should be headed in this direction. No, we should be doing this thing. We have pundits on the news that are constantly talking about how the left is too woke, the left talked about trans issues too much, the left did this, that, and the other, and we should be moving more towards the center. They're going to make the same mistake that they did in 2016 if they go with that route.
Yeah.
And the problem is that they may think that that worked in 2020, but part of the reason that Biden got reelected is because it was Trump.
Yeah.
That's really it.
Yeah.
I think that so many people push that out like as if Biden had this great campaign. He did not have a great campaign. No. It was not like this stellar barn busting campaign. It was, or no, barn storming, door busting campaign. Yeah. It was, I mean, they even made fun of him for it, that he was in the basement the whole time.
Yeah.
Now imagine if he'd been able to run a fully fledged campaign. It might have gone worse.
Yeah.
Who knows? And then looking towards 2026, we see that there are a couple of names coming down the pipeline that, well, we'll save that a little bit more towards the end. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I think to close out this little section, I'm interested to see, we've got some people who are running for vice chair here in the North Carolina Democratic Party. The current first vice chair is Jonah Garson. I think he's done a pretty dang good job as far as I'm concerned, especially with raising money and doing all the things the first vice chair is supposed to do. Yeah. There's some other people who think that they could do a better job. One of the more prominent names that I've seen so far is Aaron Johnson. Spoke with him a few nights ago. If he wins, I think we're still in good hands. So, may the best person win, or at least whoever the Democratic establishment within the North Carolina Democratic Party believes to be the best person for the job.
Yeah. And I'm going to take this back just a few minutes ago really quickly.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Go for it.
Going back to the Allison Riggs, Jefferson Griffin thing for just a second while it's on my mind.
We need to get off the tangent.
No, you're good. So this Tuesday, just for anyone interested, Kate Barr. So she ran for state senate of this election in a very gerrymandered district.
Yeah, her handle was Kate Barr can't win.
Yeah, she fully embraced it. She now has the Can't Win Victory Fund. So essentially it's going to start promoting all these different causes and whatnot. But one thing that is doing is this Tuesday, starting at 6 a.m. and until every vote of her name is read, they're going to be reading all 60,000 voter names in front of the North Carolina State Supreme Court, starting at 6 a.m. I think they said they plugged in the chat GPT and it estimated about 16 or 17 hours.
Holy crap. Yeah, they're going to do a live stream.
Yeah. So if y'all are in the Raleigh area, I'd say definitely stop by at some point, show your support. You can also go to the Can't Win Victory Fund, a website, can'twinvictoryfund.com, and look and see if your vote is one of the ones that's being challenged. Yeah,
please make sure now, because if you don't get in touch with the North Carolina Democratic Party or you don't get in touch with the Board of Elections, they're not going to be able to help you.
Exactly. And if you do discover your name is on there, I don't know what happens if you put it in on her website and you are one of the ones, I don't know if it sends you anywhere, but if you discover your name is on there, you can either reach out to the state party, or if you don't know how to get in contact with them, you can get in contact with us. We can help point you in the right direction. We have contacts with the state party ourselves, and we are more than willing to help you all out in any way we can.
Yeah, every vote counts. So
exactly.
Make sure yours does. Counted. And should be counted. So make sure yours does. Absolutely. So now that we're done with small talk, let's talk about the weather. It's pretty crazy stuff so far. Yeah. It's been colder than usual. Yeah. Yeah. And that led to an advisory that led to a lot of people on Facebook telling me not to worry about it because it's not even going to stick to the ground.
Alas.
And then at the same time, and part of the reason why I bring the weather up is because at the same time that all this was happening, the Palisades fire was going on in California, which prompted thousands of Twitter and Facebook users to come out in full force and blame Biden personally for not funding relief efforts for Hurricane Helene. Because if you missed it, he did a whole order to 100% fund the relief for the Palisades fire recovery. Yeah. So people immediately took to the online space and started saying, well, what about North Carolina? What about North Carolina? What about North Carolina? Hey, idiots. He did do that. Yep. In case you missed it, in case you were so far up your own ass that you missed it, he did do that. He did. And then on the back end of it, Congress approved $9 billion in funding. You know what our state government did?
I wonder.
Not even a tenth of that. Not even a tenth. So put that into perspective. Shut up for a minute. I might be a little harsh there, but it really does grind on you after a while, I think, to see this kind of stuff just pop up over and over and over again.
Yeah, no. And, this goes back to a few weeks ago with the Hurricane Helene relief bill. To see people, particularly on the right, because that's where this whole, oh, what about North Carolina thing? Oh, Biden didn't do that for North Carolina. This all originally as, right-wing talking points.
Mm-hmm. Well, they knew this was going to happen. Maybe not this specifically, but natural disasters occur.
Yeah. And so it pisses me off to no end, both as North Carolinian and just as a person. It pisses me off to no end to see the right try and use these natural disasters, try to use this hurricane, and try to use the fires out in California, where I saw like an hour ago, I think they're up to 15 or 20 deaths.
Something like that, yeah.
Confirmed deaths, because some of these fires they still don't have under control at all.
One of whom was like a child actor or something.
Yeah,
I was like, what the heck?
Child actor, or former child actor.
Aren't they all former child actors?
That's fair. But to see the right use this for cheap political points, it is just maddening. And the basic human indecency that is shown by that is astounding.
And I'm shaking my head because it's like, yeah, at this point, don't expect it.
Yeah.
Right? Because at this point, anybody who is in this space, anybody who is paying attention to the political nature of what's going on here in the Old North State could have foreseen this coming. That the moment anything else happened anywhere else, they've already laid the propaganda groundwork to make it seem like North Carolina was not getting help, and now these liberal cities are getting help from the liberal government. Here's the thing, man. We had a chance to help out our state, and they sold out for $253 million.
Yep.
And that was not even new money. And alongside that bill were ways to gut multiple facets of our state government. We had the chance to rein in an authoritarian power grab of the state, and we didn't do that. And then Biden and Congress came back in and we're like, okay, we're actually going to help fund the relief efforts down in North Carolina. Of course, we should be doing that. So they did that. Cut to a month later, and we're experiencing the same thing again. It's like it never even happened because the right's messaging is so strong, because it's so simple. It's why every time I passed one of those Trump safety, Kamala crime signs, I was like, this is what will win him the election. Yeah. This right here, this is the messaging. 4 words, easily digestible, easily understandable, and something you can't take your eyes away from.
Right.
It's like, it's almost embarrassing to support Kamala because you're basically saying you support crime. You want people in Western North Carolina to be homeless. It's like, wait, what? No, I don't. It's like, well, that's what you're doing if you vote for Democrats. What? That doesn't make any sense. But it doesn't matter. You're already past the point.
Yeah.
Because the point has already been made to them. So how do we get ourselves out of that hole? How do we on the left start to message effectively against something that is like politically incoherent, as not understanding how a fucking budget works?
It's honestly a tough thing to kind of work out, because how do you break down something as complicated and just incoherent at times as a budget and as different things? How do you break that down and make it digestible in 4 words? How do you make it digestible for a population that is used to, 15-second hits of dopamine on TikTok? Not to say that they're addicted or they can't pay attention or anything like that. Not saying that at all.
Right. No, and definitely subscribe to us and follow us on everything online.
Yeah.
Like we love that we can keep your attention for at least 15 seconds.
Yeah. No, so what I'm saying is, for a population that is so busy with life, how do you get through to them? Because if I'm someone who doesn't care about politics, I'm going to scroll past that, or I'm going to go do really anything else other than think about Congress.
Well, because Congress is this nebulous blob of a 14% approval rating. It's not like individual members. It's like, oh, Congress is bad, but I like my congressman. Congress is bad, but AOC has some good ideas. It's like, okay, well, she's part of Congress. And so's the Senate. There's 535 members of Congress, not including all the other people that technically get a say, like Guam, American Samoa, Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
All these territorial pieces of this American empire that technically get a say.
Who should have, voting power in Congress. Anyway.
Sure. I agree. Honestly, this is bit of a hot take, but like this is somewhere to meet in the middle. It's like, look, if you don't want to give these people statehood, at least make it a territorial vote.
Yeah.
They get an electoral vote or like a territorial vote in Congress. It could be the deciding factor.
Yeah.
You have people in Puerto Rico, you have people in Guam, you have people all over, millions of people, in fact, that just don't get a say. But that's not what we're here to talk about. So that's my hot take. Just give them some kind of representation, not just nominally.
Yeah. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, part of it is you have to make your message simple. You really do. Mm-hmm. It's the keep it simple, stupid approach.
Yeah. 4 words or less.
Yeah. Don't say, the General Assembly passed a hurricane relief bill that was power grab because it transferred power from the governor. Exactly. By that point, you have scrolled past. You are, you put your phone down. You're getting ready for bed.
Yeah. Most people don't know what a gerrymander is.
Yeah, and they don't care to know, and I can't blame them. You and I, and probably the people listening to this, no offense to the audience, we're the odd ones out. We're the weirdos, so to say, because we're the ones who are engaged and interested in this thing. The vast population is not, and I can't blame them. This is stuff that is incredibly archaic and boring and just not high on the list of people's, list of important things.
Right. It's nebulous, sometimes by design, but not necessarily. Yeah. Not necessarily. It's just, who's going to really tune in to their city council meetings?
Right.
It's like, it's important, but like, who's really doing that on a day-to-day basis?
Right.
It's only once a month, too.
Yeah.
It's not like it's some huge chunky. I watched my city council meeting today. It was literally 15 minutes long because they had like one thing, and there were 3 people in that audience. But you're right. One of the problems, I think, amongst politicos and pundits and all these people who espouse these high-minded ideas about politics and the soul of the country and ideology and all these things, there is a threshold that once you're woke, once you are politically woke, once you have gone beyond this thin ceiling of not understanding what's going on, it's very hard to look back downward and understand what people who don't know about this stuff don't know.
Right.
How do you translate? And this is what people get paid millions of dollars a year to do.
Oh yeah.
Is to translate back downward through the film, the thin layer of understanding to the people who A, don't care, B, don't understand it, and C, don't want to understand it. There are plenty of people who they're like, yeah, but like it's, they don't want to get political. They don't, but I'll vote Democrat. And it's like, no, like this is important. You should probably understand this. I understand that you're still going to vote, but do you really know what you're voting for?
Right.
Because there are Democrats that are bad too.
Yeah, there are.
There are people that run in primaries that you're just like, whoa. Hey, like I know he's a Democrat, but this dude, okay, perfect example is Eric Adams in New York State.
Yeah.
New York City.
Yeah.
The man is an ex-Republican, a cop, and somebody who is being indicted on charges of corruption.
Yeah.
I could have told you that when he was running.
Yeah.
That he was somebody that you should not support as a Democrat.
Yep.
And the problem is that people don't understand half the time how to delineate Democrats or how to delineate Republicans even. There are Republicans who are way worse than some other Republicans.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, everybody hates Mitch McConnell, and with due cause. But Mitch McConnell is not Trump.
No.
There's a vast canyon of difference between the two of them ideologically.
Yeah.
Is he going to use Trump to gain power? Absolutely, because that is McConnell's MO.
Yeah.
But Donald Trump doesn't need Mitch McConnell, and he knows that. So he messes with the Senate to make it to where they are a cog running just enough out of step with Trump's regime that, they can still piggyback off of his success and yet keep some of their autonomy. That, again, how do you even begin to translate that downward? How do you even begin to make people understand that?
Yeah.
I've listened to hours of podcasts. I've watched tons of explainer videos. I've read hundreds of articles. That's a lot of time.
Yeah, it is. And I think there are a few people out there who do it really well, who are able to condense this information into very concise, very clear, easy to understand ways. And, now that I'm thinking about, basically all of them are on TikTok. Thinking of like under the desk news, for example.
Sure.
What's their name? V. I think they go by V.
V.
V Spar, maybe. Yeah. They are able to take very complicated stories and condense several of them to like a 2-3 minute video and you can walk away with a very good understanding.
Yeah.
What's her name? Victoria Hammett, I think. She's with like Gen Z for Change or something like that.
Okay.
Like 30-second, 45-second videos tops.
Sure.
And she can tell you, all about how shady whatever the Republicans are doing that day is.
Yeah.
And how to fight back against that.
It's how do you get that hook?
Yeah.
And for me, the hook was, I don't understand how any of this shit works.
Yeah.
Back in 2016, before, really it was 2015, when Trump first started running, I was like, I don't understand how any of this shit works.
Yeah.
I need to probably understand how some of it works. I didn't understand the Electoral College at all. And like, I had watched the Schoolhouse Rock video. I had government class in high school, and I still didn't understand it. So when people say, oh, well, we need more education, we need government classes, we need civics classes, I'm going to tell you right now, that's not going to help. It might help some people, but it's not going to help the vast majority of high schoolers who are not going to care about how a bill becomes a law more than they are going to care about what they're going to be doing after school with their friends.
I was more concerned about going home and playing Halo,
And I was hanging out with my girlfriend. We live 2 different lives. It's fine.
Well, I was in band. What did I know about girlfriend? Anyway.
There it is. See, but even then, you probably cared more about band than you did about government. And look what you do now.
Yeah.
So it's this. There's a crowd out there that exists that thinks there is a simple answer to everything.
Yeah.
There's a blanket answer, one of which is education. Oh, we just need more education. Not necessarily. I'm not coming out as an adversary of public education or that we need more education, but I don't think it's the end all be all. I think that there is a severe lack of participation.
Yeah.
Like, we run in some small circles.
Yeah.
And until I was in them, I did not realize how small they were.
Yeah.
It's a little bit jarring because you start running into the same people over and over and over again, and you're like, wait, you're part of this group too? Oh, and you're part of that group, and you're elected to this office, and you start to realize, like, oh, the fabric that's holding this whole thing together is like a couple hundred people.
Yeah.
And a good portion of them are retirees.
I back in about 2015, 2016, because that's when I also really started to pay attention to politics. Because I thought government was kind of interesting because I was a nerd.
We know.
Yeah, but like I say, I'm a nerd as I'm fiddling with a Boba Fett Lego set off screen.
That's your fidget toy, huh?
Yeah. Nah. So I was a nerd. I thought it was interesting, but I didn't really pay attention to the current events. I didn't pay attention to the actual current political happenings until about 2015, where I'm like, okay, Trump, he's that dude from The Apprentice.
Yeah. This
guy's got to be a joke. And then, like, the more I watched it, the more I was like, hold up. I'm like, this guy something's not right. Mm-hmm. So that's when I started to get more involved. I went to it was the Watauga County Democratic Party, like their monthly meeting. And, I'm like, okay, this could be a cool way for me to get involved. And I looked around, and it struck me because even in a college town, a very liberal college town, because we're talking about Boone, North Carolina, a very bright blue dot in a sea of red. I was one of the youngest people there. And there were like maybe 2 or 3 other people really who were that young.
Yeah.
And it definitely got a lot better, I will say. But like, that was concerning. I'm like, we need older people, yes, because we need that institutional knowledge. We need that experience. We need that know-how. But we also need the young blood, so to say, who have that time, who have that energy, who have the experience with, the best way to reach people their age.
Yeah. And I think so CJ, you're 32, right?
We'll say that. 33.
Oh, you're 33. Okay. And I'm 31. We're both dads. We're both married. We both have had full-time jobs. Young people, especially of North Carolina, who are in your 20s, who are unmarried, who do not have children, you will never have as much time on your hands as you do right now to make and affect change. Please, for the love of God, do it now before you get tied down by anything else. And let me just say this. I love my family. I love my daughter. I love that I have a job that I have liked. I love my life. But there are people that have a shit ton more time on their hands to get involved, to get engaged. And you'll never have as much time as you do when you're not around family. Yeah. It's just true.
Yeah. You have commitments.
Yeah. And I actually saw something about this on TikTok, as a matter of fact, that part of the reason that people with families tend to veer so far to the middle politically is because they can't risk certain things. It's because they can't get involved. There's too much at stake. And you and I, out of, the 10 or 12 people that were campaign managers that we know of, like in our circles, we were the only ones with kids.
Yeah.
Besides one other person. And they were a single mom.
Yeah.
We don't have as much time on our hands.
No.
Just as is. And that's not a complaint. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
So even now, like you and I are recording this at 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday because we literally don't have any other time on our hands. So this is my desperate plea to all the 18 to 35-year-olds out there that do not have kids, that do not have wives or husbands or partners to go to. You're not alone. And while you have the energy and the time, use it.
Yeah. Because
you'll never have it again.
And I will say, I mean,
and now is a critical time too. Sorry, I'm not trying to keep on going, but like we think like, oh, it's, time is going to pass us by. What's there for me on the horizon? This right here, right now, it's in front of you.
Yeah. I get for, the young folks out there. I understand that what you see right now in DC and even on state level is incredibly frustrating, and it may feel like, there's not a space for you in, the Democratic Party. You may not feel like there is a way for you to get involved. You may not feel like you will be welcomed or anything like that. Nothing is going to change unless you change it. Nothing's going to change unless you get involved. There's a speech that Teddy Roosevelt gave. I think it was in France, maybe Paris. Oh yeah, it was the man in the arena speech, or the citizenship in the republic. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least falls while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Love that speech. Love that section.
And it's evergreen, because there's never going to be a time that does not matter.
Right.
And I know that sounds weird to say at first, but like a lot of people feel as though we're in the middle era of history. Like things are just the way that they are. But you affect change every day, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah.
We've already done a good portion of the kind of work that we'll do for the rest of our lives. It was a great honor for me to be a part of a campaign this year. We did not win, but I was still there, and I learned a lot, and I felt like a fraud for a good portion of it. I'll be honest. Like, I think that there always exists, when you first really start getting into the arena, there always exists this part of you that is like, I don't belong here. This is for people that are different than me, or better than me, or more experienced than me. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. But eventually you get the rhythm of it, and you start to understand it better. You start to understand yourself better, and you start to not feel so much like a fraud. And I can guarantee you that unless they're a freaking psycho, almost everybody in the arena has felt that way at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. I was campaign manager this cycle, and, I had been one before, and there were still times I was like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I here? I shouldn't even be here. I have no business doing this stuff, even though I have worked in politics since 2016. Almost 10 years I've been at this in some way or another. I still felt like that. Yeah. But I pushed through it. For me, part of it was, well, I wouldn't be here if, people wouldn't have hired me for this position if they didn't believe in me,
Right.
And,
and you're stepping up.
Yeah.
That's a big thing too, is again, and I have to reiterate this because, and I see your cat now, sorry. And I have to reiterate this because I think that people tend to believe that there is this huge swath of talent that's just waiting to get started. It's a much smaller pool than you think.
Yeah.
That's not to discourage people. That's to say, get started now. Whether it's politics, whether it's advocacy work, if you care about something, if you're listening to us right now, if you're on TikTok and you scroll through hours of political content and you sit on the sidelines, You don't have to. There's tons of resources. There's tons of things that need to be done. I started out just by making calls on Beto O'Rourke's campaign for Senate. That was the first thing that I did. And I technically shouldn't have really been doing it, but I didn't use my real name in the calls, so it was fine. I was part of the Air National Guard at the time, so like it's a little gray area, but when you're active duty, you can't be doing that stuff at all.
Right.
So I would just say I lost 10 years of my ability to do political work, and here I am. I had to hit the ground running immediately as soon as I got here. And already I've met so many amazing people, including CJ, including some people who are now in office.
Yeah.
And I'm proud to know those people because they are the men and women in the arena. And they're just, most of them are just people. Most of them are just regular folks. They're like, you can talk to them. They'll come right up to you and shake your hand, and it's really not that big of a deal. You know, like Allison Riggs, I know she's at the very center of this huge story, but you can like walk up to her and just have a conversation. She's not really a politician like that.
Right.
She's a justice of the court. She's a lawyer. She was a civil rights attorney. Like, these are the kinds of things that I think people get a little disillusioned with because they see politicians and they don't want to be associated with it because it's dirty and all these other things. Start by talking to them. You will be able to sniff it out pretty quick. I can guarantee you that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, the guy whose campaign I worked on earlier last year, which I looked back at my Facebook memories, and I think it was actually a year ago today that I accepted the job.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Thank you. Rodney Pierce, he is one of the new members of the North Carolina General Assembly. He was a middle school teacher. You know, you can go up to him and just strike up a conversation as long as you are, you know, respectful, obviously.
Yeah.
He'll talk to you all day long if you want, you know.
Yeah.
I think, let's see.
I think most of the people that you'll find that are like self-important, that take their own time very, very seriously, not usually the people that are worth talking to.
Yeah, no, very much so. I mean, when I was working on this campaign I got off of back in November, you know, at one point I was talking to Robert Reeves, who, if you don't know, is the House Minority Leader in the General Assembly. And I'm like, hey, sorry to bother you. I know you're very busy. I'm sure this is, you know, below your pay grade. He's like, no. You're good.
They will shut that down really quickly.
Yeah.
A lot of them will.
Yeah. And, you know, the people who are in office for the right reasons, you know, people who want to actually affect positive change and help better the lives of their constituents, and not just their constituents, but North Carolinians, Americans, whatever, as a whole, they will take the time to talk to you. Or if they don't have the time, they will have someone listen to your concerns, genuinely listen, genuinely engage with you.
Yeah.
And again, to go back a few minutes, this just kind of hit me.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. If you are a young person who is still hesitant to get involved with politics, but cares about something, now is the time. Not just because you don't have, you know, family or commitments or whatever, but because the next 4 years under Trump are going to be a mess. You know,
if his first term was any indication.
Yeah. And I think his second term is going to be his first term on steroids. He gets sworn in a week from tomorrow, or a week from.
Yeah, a week from tomorrow. Yep.
Yeah. And there are people who are going to be hurt. There are people who are going to suffer immensely. There are people who are going to die because of his policies. And if you're someone, even if you think it's the most niche thing to care about, if you're someone who has something that they are passionate about, who they care about, or what that they care about, and you think that a Trump administration or that a Republican-controlled General Assembly is going to hurt whatever that thing is, get involved. Because, what is it from the Lorax? It's like, unless someone cares an awful lot, nothing will change, or whatever it is. I can't rhyme it. I don't remember. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I think the general idea is there though.
Yeah. Yeah. But like, fight for what you care about and what you believe in. You don't need to be a lawyer. You don't need to have a doctorate in political science. You don't need anything like that. You can be whatever. And if you care, if you have something you're passionate about, voice that passion and get involved defending it. AOC, for example, she was a bartender. And now look at her. She is, I'd argue, the most popular member of Congress.
Probably. We'd have to look at a poll for that.
Yeah, I would argue she's the most popular member.
Because polls are extremely reliable as far as I've seen. especially in 2024.
Jeez.
I have made the New Year's resolution, to not look at polls anymore.
Yeah.
I am done. I am fed up. I am completely disillusioned with polls. I have unsubscribed to all the pollster people on YouTube and TikTok and stuff because I'm done. I'm officially done. I don't care what any of them have to say anymore. It's like, I know that was a bit of a dime turn.
No, you're good. I just think about my burning, passionate hatred of Nate Silver.
Well, Nate Silver has curated an incredible career for himself by by virtually just saying, it looks like this, but it might not be.
Yeah. Really, really hedging his bets there.
Pretty insightful stuff, Nate. Appreciate the silver bullet that you always lay out for us. But with that, I think we have gone way over time with what I originally had in mind. and we didn't even get to talk about the Wiley Nickel revelation.
Oh, God.
We might talk about that next time, considering the next episode is going to be when the new president is going to be sworn in. TikTok will likely be beheaded in the States, and the next 4 years officially begins. So until then, we'll see you next time, folks. Stay safe and make sure to stay over here on the left of Old North.
Good luck to us all.
God help us.